You're allergic to process. You don't want to feel corporate. You don't want red tape. And yet you're experiencing some really frustrating things in your team. You don't really know if people are working on the right things. Maybe you lost a high performer unexpectedly. You felt totally blindsided. Maybe you don't really feel like you have a good pulse on how everyone's doing in general. And you are making every single decision, or maybe more than you really should be. And you're thinking, gosh, how did I get into this situation? And more, how the heck do I get out of it? Well, the answer, my friends, is through systems. When you're feeling stuck, when you're feeling like, gosh, like I know that this shouldn't be this hard. I shouldn't feel like I'm swimming through jello, or I hired good people. I'm paying them well. Like, why is all this happening? It is not you, and it is not your people. It is your systems or your lack of systems on your team. Now, I'm not just saying this as a former corporate team ops person. I drove team operations at Microsoft, at Google, at Apple. And so, yeah, I've seen a process or two. But I'm not saying it because it's like something I'm interested in. I'm saying it because in those environments where they had the highest stakes, I'm talking about shipping the first iPhone 10 when they got rid of the home button, HoloLens, the world's first holographic computer. I worked on YouTube Shorts. In these environments where we are really like literally behind the 8 ball to deliver, to meet our competitive need, to just be there. It's the moments when we are feeling so stressed, we don't have enough resources. That is where we need to rely on systems. Now, working in these large environments, I understand not every system is the right thing for every business. And so when I talk about systems, I do not mean, rolling out some really complicated thing that would work for an organization of, 10 or 20 or 100,000 employees. I am talking about understanding what is needed to create seamless flow of information through your company. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Leading Small Teams, a real talk podcast tackling the ins and outs of leading teams in the modern workplace. I'm Leah Garvin, your host, with a decade of experience driving team operations in companies like Google, Apple, and Microsoft, bringing you insider strategies to make you a more confident and effective leader. From delegating to feedback to avoiding micromanaging and more, this podcast gives you the tools to empower your team, scale yourself as a leader, and grow your business. Whether you're managing a team of 1 or 100, everyone is welcome to hang out with Real Talk Leading Small Teams. So when I say systems or process, I kind of use those interchangeably. I'm talking about the repeatable steps that you take to get from point A to point Z. Now, when you say, I'm allergic to process, I hate process, you got to think about it. You're actually using process every single day in your life. A morning routine. You get up, you have breakfast, you have your coffee, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, you get ready. That is a set of steps that gets you from bed to work, right? You're following a process. It's no different. Now, if you woke up one day and you first brushed your teeth and then you had breakfast and then you forgot to get dressed or whatever, you'd be all like kind of discombobulated. Well, that's the result on our team when we don't have systems or processes. People just kind of feel like, well, wait a second. One day you wanted me to have a really detailed presentation for this meeting. The next day I didn't need that. One day this review was 20 minutes. The next day it's 2 hours. And these kinds of challenges show up in businesses big or small. These kinds of things show up whether you have a team of 2 or maybe you're in a corporate team where there are 10s or 20s or plus thousands of people. We can have a team with a lot of systems and we're not following them. So I'm talking about what are the things that we need to do to feel like we understand how to be effective and successful. When it comes to, gosh, I don't know what my team is working on all day and are they working on the right things? That's a signal that we're not really utilizing kind of a work tracking system in a way that's usable for us. A lot of us implement a tool that's got a lot of features, a lot of bells and whistles, and we're confused by it. We can't take one look and see, okay, I know exactly what the status of projects are. I know exactly how much bandwidth folks have. We feel stuck. So it's not the right tool for the solution. It's not answering the question that we have. It might be helpful for individual project teams and things like that, but it's not answering our question. So we're still feeling stuck. Now, for that example specifically, my Snippets tool that you can get free at leahgarvin.com/snippets, it was answering the question so many leaders came to me with. They said, I need a bird's eye view. I don't want the tasks. I want to know what's getting done week by week. I want to be able to celebrate teams' wins. And most of all, I want to know where people are stuck and they haven't said anything. And so Snippets literally has folks fill out those 3 things every single week. And that's how we have a bird's eye view. And so literally, if you're stuck with that, head to leahgarvin.com/snippets because that is going to unlock so much clarity for you. What about if you're stuck making all the decisions, feeling like I'm trying to empower my team. I think I showed them I trust them, but they're always coming to me to verify everything. And like, if I go offline for 2 hours, I have 45 emails and things are just waiting. Like, what? When we run into that situation, which again, I've seen that in small businesses and I've definitely experienced that in the corporate world. We need a system for understanding how decisions are made, who makes what calls, where are people factored into the conversation. And when we have that, people can make decisions without you. Starts to free up a ton of your time. Now that's the power of systems. They're not just, you don't just, again, not process for process sake, which is like a hilarious thing I've heard people say as if anyone's just implementing process for no reason. These are money saving strategies. Every single time you notice a bottleneck or someone doesn't call that client back because they didn't get the answer that they should have already known because it was in your inbox, or two people are working on the same thing because they thought you meant this or whatever. All of that costs you so much money. I had this kind of ops playbook calculator I used to show folks. I love spreadsheets, a little bit too much for too much information for a lot of folks, but I actually calculated across all these different areas. What does it cost when meetings run over? What does it cost when two people work on the same things? What does it cost when you don't have an onboarding system? So someone starts and they're not really sure what to work on, and it was literally the lack of systems was costing businesses with maybe 5 people or so, paying people only $20 an hour. That was kind of how I calculated this. This was costing people between $20,000 and $40,000 a month. Literally. Because simple thing, because they didn't have a meeting agenda or they didn't understand, okay, here's how we're going to decide who comes to what form and what's in what comes out of that and how next steps are tracked. These are simple things. And you can literally, it's never too early to think about these things for your team and for your business. I don't care if you're managing one person. I don't care if you have 1,000 people. You've got to have something so folks understand, okay, this is how we get things done. Now, a business owner I worked with a few years ago we implemented the ops playbook for her. She felt like, she ran a PR firm. And she said, I feel like I'm the only person working to run this business. Like, doesn't my team members know that if we're not bringing in new accounts, like eventually they can't be paid? And she felt so frustrated. And she said, hey, everyone, like I need everyone to be growing, the business here. But they said, sure, I'm going to try. But once we implemented the ops playbook system, everyone understood the expectations of their roles. And immediately, literally within 14 days, her 2 account managers had brought in, each of them, about $13,000 of new business because they understood the expectation and they knew what to do next. Another one of my clients runs a med spa and she was paying folks thousands of dollars a month in overtime because there was no system in place for deciding, when do we do overtime and when do we not. So through our work on the ops playbook, we implemented like a priority list of what's going on every single day, what has to be done and what doesn't, what qualifies for overtime and what doesn't, and got everyone on the same page around it. These are the kinds of wins that you have immediately when you have a system in place. And it's not complicated. It's clarity, right? We're not creating new things. You enter it in here, you ask this. We're saying like, what is the easiest way to understand how to be successful? So I'm all about removing steps. I'm all about saying, hey, why is this thing clunky? Why is this hard? Do people think they need budget approval for every $2? No, let's make that higher. Let's figure out the thresholds. It's figuring out with you and your unique situation, okay, what makes sense to you? Now, my ops playbook clients, they're saving, $20,000, $30,000 a month on these optimizations. These are things all of us can be enjoying by thinking about, okay, what are these kind of nuggets of clarity I need to be making with my team so they can be right there with you? That's the shift we make. And it's immediate. And I want to clue you in on something because I found it working team operations at Microsoft, working on HoloLens. I saw the same thing working at Apple and the design team, the human interface team that designs all the iPhones, Mac, all that stuff. Found the same thing working at Google. I think sometimes we can believe people don't want process, but we, the leader, we don't really like it, but the team is hungry for it. I want to tell you something, working across implementing SOP systems processes, probably across tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the companies the size I was doing this at. I get probably 10% of the pushback is from the team, and 90%, maybe 5 and 95 is from the leadership, is other folks that have to actually be overseeing the system. Your team is hungry for clarity. They want to know how to be successful. They want to know how to be prepared for a meeting. They want to know they're working on the right thing. So if you have decided, I don't want any systems, I don't want any process because you don't like it, you're doing a disservice to your team who's hungry for it, and you're leaving all that money on the table, not to mention. So it's not should you have systems or not. It's what are the right systems for you? How do you find the right tools that don't feel like they've complicated things? How do you find the right partner to work with if you want to work with someone external that makes it easy to use and safe and comfortable, right? And then it's about, okay, what are we going to roll out so that everyone understands, what this is about? Now, the last thing about systems, the most important thing, and this is what I will tell you, this was a huge lesson I learned at Microsoft that I re-implemented back at Apple and then at Google again, is when you are getting folks to shift from doing something one way to another. This is change management 101, but it's especially true when it comes to process. Folks are going to say, it feels like thrash. I don't want to change. I'm used to this. They're going to have all sorts of complaints. And you're going to go, I knew it. I knew they didn't want the process. That is not true. They don't want to feel like, am I doing this for no reason because I'm being monitored or some, assumption that's being made. It's not that they want the process. They want the benefit. They don't see the benefit yet. So what I learned, and I implemented over and over and over, is you've got to anchor into what are we solving and how will this make their lives easier? And you reinforce that again and again and again, and you will get people so freaking excited about whatever process you're talking about. I remember this at Apple when I had folks on the design team first going from I don't want to look at the bug tracking tool. It's ugly. We make this beautiful UI and that's some engineering thing over there. I went from that to people excitedly entering their task, telling me, look, Lee, I have everything in here. And they were doing it on their own, no reminding, because I landed what's in it for them. We've got to do that. I already said it with anything we're communicating. Really, at any point, we always want folks to know what's in it for them. But when it comes to process, because that's where you can get this pushback, which will give you the false signal, they don't want process. They just want to kind of wing it. Not the case. They want to know what's in it for them, and they will follow you to the end of the earth. I've seen it before. And I think that deep understanding, honestly, is why I've been so effective at implementing the ops playbook with so many types of businesses, from med spas to insurance companies to agencies to production to home building, because we have to get under that. And that's where you get folks bought in. So I want us to close with not being afraid of systems and not feeling I don't even know how to figure out what I need. It all originates at the pain point, at the stuck point, at the thing that should feel easier, but it just doesn't. And literally, we open the floodgates from there. And if you want support for your team, reach out, hello@leagarvin.com. Ops Playbook is my signature, my favorite thing to do with teams, because when we implement this, that's when you start saving that $20,000, $30,000 a month. What can you be doing with that? You could make a senior hire, one of those people that you have been dying to bring on your team. That's what we free up, because we get rid of all this waste, all this confusion, all this stagnancy. You can be reaching out to more clients. You can be retargeting past clients. You can be hiring a marketing agency to scale. You can be running Google and Meta ads. That is what you can reinvest this money into, things that are going to help you grow. But you got to get it from somewhere, and it's going to come from the inefficiencies happening on your team. All right. See you next time. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope this podcast makes leading your team feel just a little bit easier. If you liked this episode, check out my most popular tool for staying in the know of what your team's working on without having to micromanage at leagarvin.com/snippets. And if you're looking for more support for yourself as a leader or for the team you're managing, don't hesitate to reach out at leagarvin.com. See you next time.